John? Is that you?
You tell me.
I'm done playing games, John.
I assure you, this is no game.
Spec Ops: The Line is a third-person modern military shooter released in June 2012. The game was banned in the United Arab Emirates for a depiction of a destroyed Dubai. So, to put this in perspective in terms of its video game competition, Spec Ops came out between Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 and Medal of Honor Warfighter. And while the game has sold over 1.5 million copies on Steam, that is still considered a commercial failure for a game this expensive. So I feel Spec Ops is a strange combination of a AAA production quality and a thematically motivated passion project, and the latter is clearly thanks to lead writer Walt Williams and lead designer Corey Davis. The two have gone on record as stating their intent was to use the themes and setting of warfare to tell a deconstructive story, at least when compared to other shooters. And this was a deliberate response to competing modern military games like Call of Duty, which were beginning to use shock value to promote controversy and sales in big-budget shocker scenes. The game has become a cult classic, and it's had a lot of good analysis and critique. Since its release, there have been a bunch of other games that make similar integration between story and gameplay. But this game still means a lot to me on multiple levels. I've always been considering the idea of reviewing this so I can finally get all these thoughts about this game off my chest. So this is going to be my experience with Spec Ops: The Line, an attempt at understanding why I've beaten this game at least 6 different times, when other games are still collecting digital dust in my Steam library. So of course, spoilers are ahead. I first bought and played this game back in August of 2014. I got the good ending, in case you're curious. It didn't really make me feel any better. I had come into the experience knowing this game was going to go for an emotional gut punch, and it still worked on me. Maybe that's just because I'm a sentimental sap of a person, but I know I'm not alone in feeling this way. Some people have accused this game of using deliberately misleading advertising to set players up for the gut punch of psychological horror, and this may have been the effect of the game's marketing, but I doubt it was entirely intentional. The game's store page describes it as being designed to challenge players' morality by putting them into the middle of unspeakable situations. And sure, the trailers without context seem to show a generic military shooter, but just a little bit more research makes it clearly obvious that's not true. Cross the line in a mature story that explores the dark side of war, where there are no bright outcomes and only bad or worse choices. Yeesh. So, moving on to the topic of gameplay, it deliberately apes the mechanic and style of other shooters to lull you into a false sense of security. It is deliberately insidious in its design. One moment, you're mowing down insurgents with head wraps and funny accents, just like normal, a regular day at the beach. And then you find yourself fighting rogue American soldiers. While we're on the topic of gameplay, it feels dated, is probably the best word. That's probably somewhat the fault of its long development cycle. There's an inconsistent cover mechanic, the aiming is somewhat clunky with serious mouse acceleration, and the level design ranges from quite good to average and bland. The game is in third person, by the way, and I suspect this is an intentional design decision to emphasize separation between you and Walker, the main character. Most, if not all, other modern military shooters are in first person. They use their main characters as self-inserts. You take the role of them so you can feel like a big action hero. Spec Ops is seeking to remind you that you are probably not a grizzled Delta Force operator. You are definitely not a hero. You are also not really a killer. You are not protagonist Martin Walker. He's probably not someone you want to be anyway. But what I feel the real strength of the gameplay is how it manages to consistently support the story and thematics in many different and subtle ways. A figure rushes out at you, you shoot reflexively, and then you realize you just shot a civilian woman dead. Without good trigger discipline, she will die at your hands. The game doesn't pop up a big "don't kill civilians" warning message or deduct a number from your karma meter, or anything like that. She is dead, and no one else will ever know. She doesn't have any dialogue, there's no follow-up or mention of this scene later, but this understated moment is just as hard-hitting as any of the game's deliberate, overly dramatic scenes because it's avoidable. If you watch your fire, you can avoid shooting her and save her life, which is the whole reason you came to Dubai in the first place, to rescue the survivors. So there's definitely a few more examples of this kind of insidious, subtle, creeping feeling of paranoia. Conrad's face is everywhere in this game once you know to look for it. The game changes the scenery around you when the camera is turned, just like a horror movie. Transitions between scenes even have their own language and subtext. When the game fades to black, that indicates a normal transition, whereas a fade to white indicates usually a hallucination or Walker deceiving himself in some way. Every now and again, you'll be blowing your way through a bunch of enemies when you see a face that looks familiar. I have no idea why, but I found myself hesitating for a split second here before pulling the trigger. Maybe all this thinking about subtext and paranoia is getting to me, I really don't know. So what exactly is going on here in Dubai? Trying to pin down what is objectively occurring isn't really possible considering everything seen through Walker's unstable perspective. There's plenty of evidence to support Dubai as a type of purgatory or an extended hallucination, but the exact mechanics of this aren't clear, and I think in many ways that's for the best. The ambiguous nature is at best. So the better question is probably to ask, why is all of this happening? Why is reality and its existence out to lunch? What narrative purpose do all these actions serve? Walker did something in Afghanistan that he doesn't want to talk about. Reality seemingly shifts around him to torment him with his worst fears, and there's indications that other people see reality differently from him. Gradually, you question Walker's judgment and actions more and more. You relate with Adams and Lugo as they increasingly grow distant, bitter, and distrustful. Walker transforms from a professional soldier to a gung-ho American psychopath, screaming and swearing at his enemies.
God damn it!
He doesn't sound like Nolan North anymore.
God damn it!
Barely even sounds human.
He's in the open! Reloading!
And in hearing the hate in his voice.
Fuck you!
Sure, it's just a game. It's just a game just like always. But riddle me this, why did I buy this game when I already knew what was going to happen? Why did I kill all those people when I could have just stopped? Why do I even care? Why did I beat this game 6 times when after the first time I already know what's going to happen? It's just a game. I can turn it off, I can pull the plug, I can walk away. That is the definition of privilege. If something bothers you, you can leave. Walker, speaking as a metaphysical construct, cannot. I can't judge him, really, from the comfort of my home. And after all, he already judges himself far more harshly than I can really bring myself to. I don't know how this miserable, broken shell of a man came to be this way. But maybe how is the wrong question. So we're looking at the idea of why. Many people criticize this game's design, accusing the developers for forcing their hand into horrible situations and making bad choices, like the white phosphorus attack, which you have no choice but to do if you want to progress in the game. This is an intentional reaction, according to Williams' interview. The player blaming the developer for this atrocity was expected, and I feel that that parallels Walker blaming Conrad for the atrocities that happened. In the end, it's up for you to decide if the action is your fault or the fault of the developers. And the same goes for Walker's decision. There is no real right or wrong answer here. The game is deliberately being confrontative and intentionally frustrating you and provoking your anger with the setting, with the situation. And then the game, once you're good and angry, gives you a legitimate choice, without any signposting, to see how you'll react. Do I feel the story and its linearity could have been handled better? Yes, definitely. But keep in mind this is a deconstruction of the modern military shooter, which are games that are so linear that trying to stab someone wrong will cause your character to have a heart attack and die on the spot. I think the player desire for more choice is a good thing. Spec Ops is presenting its violence and its obligatory war crimes, like in every other shooter, as unnecessary and pointless instead of being fun and heroic. Because players want a different way out of this horrible situation, it shows they want to do more than just play a game to shoot everyone and let God sort them out. They want something more than just another 4-hour-long campaign every year with no originality, no creativity, no soul. They want something more than just a generic multiplayer experience where they can level up and shoot things with their friends. And Williams states in his interview he doesn't necessarily want the players to feel bad, but he wants them to feel something beyond the usual detached excitement when they're normally playing. The game can be seen as a space for us to examine ourselves. It's like looking into a mirror. And that's why I find the game so unnerving, I think. I'm afraid in many ways of myself, of seeing what depths of anger and frustration I reach to. I'm worried that I might enjoy killing virtual things a little bit too much. I don't want to hurt other people by inaction or misdirection in my own life, and the game touches on all these things as Walker's fears paralleling your possible own. Spec Ops has obvious flaws, but it clearly has passion and a unified direction behind it, a creative vision, a desire to tell a coherent message rather than selling the most copies or appealing to the lowest common denominator. It is an example of a narrative standard and focus I'm always a sucker for, and it's an example of what we can improve on in the future, considering its many weaknesses. There's always going to be room in my life for games that are fun. Like Spec Ops, though, I'm also interested in the next game that will make me question why I play games in the first place. Thank you so much for watching.
There's battle lines being drawn, but nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Young people speaking their minds are getting so much resistance from behind. Time we stop. Hey, what's that sign?